Thank you very much for that introduction. So I have a bad habit of not talking into the mic. Hopefully that's picking me up. Great. So having been introduced as a former lawyer, then and now talking on technology, you know this is going to be a great talk. I'm going to try and pick up the passion bit rather than the lawyer or the technologist bit. Now, there are three big trends that are converging at the moment in the sort of world of data. There's big data, and some of the talks that we've had so far today have talked about that. There's sort of personal data, and the fact that we're continuing to track more and more data about ourselves from things like our cell phones, picking up where we are and where we move to, through to devices like this one, which picks up how many steps I've done and tells me whether or not I had a good night's sleep last night, and into an open data. So this sort of trend in society to share more data between parties, make it available for reuse, and make it available to the innovators. Partly led by government, but it's sort of spreading into the private sector. And that's the one that I'm going to talk about today. And, the three trends that I just mentioned, well, they kind of combine into things that can be meaningful for everybody. And this is something that we can see picked up by reports and analyses by organisations like McKinsey. So McKinsey have done an analysis on the market size for each of those classes of data. They're on the previous slide, so the big data, the open data, and the personal data. And in each case, McKinsey found the benefits to be in the hundreds of billions to the trillions of dollars worldwide through the better use of data to take decisions. I think the figure for open data is $3 trillion worldwide through better use of open data around the world. And a little bit about the Open Data Institute. Now, what we do is we don't aim to solve the problems for everybody. Instead, we aim to act as a catalyst. So we aim to bring people together, to bring together government, private sector, and academia to work on problems and try and find solutions that use open data to create economic, environmental, and social value. So, shorthand version is kind of we work on the so what. We're only really interested where there's impact. And what I want to do today is I want to take a little bit of time just to talk through some of those examples of impact and talk through a little bit about some of the things that we think are important in the market. So I've just noticed that apparently, according to the timer, I've still got 20 minutes left. I think that lies to me. So the first example I want to talk about is open data as culture. Now, open data, you might have been thinking this is going to be a very technical talk. It's going to involve lots of stuff about data centers. It's going to involve lots of stuff about analytics. Don't worry, some of those do come later. But the first example is around open data as providing cultural objects. Now, the reason that I open with this is that open data, I said earlier, it could be relevant to everybody. Well, this is kind of an example of how. Open data can have impact in sectors that you wouldn't have thought of from the get-go. One of the first things that we did as the Open Data Institute, almost before we had any staff, was we launched the world's first Open Data as Culture exhibition. And that attracted 89 respondents from 20 countries in 2 weeks. And got a lot of press coverage, as you can see from the slide. And what it is it's using data that's open and available to power some of these things. So the chap on the picture, every LED on his body is powered by open data from the artist's house. And this is my personal favorite example. This is the snack machine in our kitchen. This is a snack machine that does not accept money. If you want a packet of potato chips, then it won't accept your money. It doesn't operate on a swipe card. This is a data-powered snack machine. This is only powered by bad news in the British economy. If factories are closed, if people are sacked, then there are potato chips. Cheer yourself up. We did think about putting it on loan to the UK Treasury, but we thought that might be a bit too controversial. But this is what I mean. This is open data being used to surface things in a new and interesting way. The second example, and I did promise you I'd get onto the analytics, is about open data enabling open innovation. So this example, the NHS Information Centre, so our National Health Service, had published information about drug prescriptions in the UK, in England, and have been publishing it in a suitably anonymised form for about 12 months. And this is a real treasure trove of information. This is millions of rows, huge amount of information in there, you know, the prescribing doctor, the type of drug, how long it was for, whether it's a repeat prescription. But we couldn't find any public reuse of it. So, you know, thinking Open Data Institute, we keep saying open data creates innovation. Here is this really rich data set, but where is the innovation? You know, anecdotally, we knew that some of the drug companies were using this information to check that their drug reps weren't lying. So, you know, that was a good thing, but nothing we could point to and prove the value. So we convened a sort of some health experts, some data experts, and some sort of people who are just provocative thinkers. And we got them all together for a hack weekend. And actually, this was one of the things that people were working on. We were, there's something in this. So we gave them some seed funding. By them, I mean the startup company Mastodon C, sort of ethical big data company, and a group of healthcare experts, Open Healthcare. We gave them some seed funding. They went away. In 6 weeks, they identified a £200 million cash saving for the NHS. And that's from switching from branded drugs to generic drugs. You know, this is not news to the healthcare industry, but this is the first time it was crystallised, the first time somebody put a price tag around it and could back that up using data that went down to the individual patient. So this was the first time that type of analysis was done. My second example, or third example, sorry, is from peer-to-peer lending. So this is an online exchange market looking to disrupt banks. You know, this is people lending direct to other people. And this is an industry which 10 years ago didn't exist at all. So 10 years ago, a few people went to the regulator and said, hey, this is an interesting model. You know, this is quite niche. Don't worry, it's only rich people lending to rich people. Please don't regulate us as if we're a bank. Very important that the British banking regulation system works so beautifully that there has been no new banks in the last 100 years until one in the last 2. But we still had to bail them out quite a lot. So it was very important for them that they did get a new banking system, new type of regulatory system. But 10 years on, and 10 years of double-digit growth, they're no longer tiny. This is no longer rich people lending to rich people. And the regulators were starting to look at them anew and starting to go, well, you said that you were small and that there was no real money flowing through it. That's no longer true. As you can see, there's now, at the time we did the analysis, almost £500 million of money going through. They're on course to hit £1 billion next year. And so we said, well, how about a new deal? How about the industry can open up data on its operations, and the regulator can take that data and do some analysis. So that's precisely what we did. We spoke to all of the major lending exchanges. There's only 5, so it's slightly easier. And we spoke to the bank, and we got the project together, and we mapped out what was going on in the peer-to-peer lending market using actual data, updated. I think the exchanges said that they weren't going to put any real effort in, so it's updated every 5 minutes. Which, in comparison to the traditional banking model where you get regulatory filings once a month, once a quarter, is amazing. And we were able to prove, to quote the Bank of England, that you could take a data-rich, regulation-light approach to a market. This was this data, available openly, updated every 5 minutes, enabled the regulator to say this is a well-formed market and to take regulatory decisions without having to ladle on too much regulation. Next example is in a sort of similar field. This is also, finance, and open data. At the G8 last year, there was an awful lot of talk about tax and transparency, and there was an awful lot of talk, white papers, discussion, but there was very little data-driven analysis. So we talked to one of our startup companies, Open Corporates, and they said, well, we've got some of that data. This regulatory filings from this regulator in the US, and from this one, and from a third regulator in the United States, and we think we can combine it all. So that's what they did. They combined data from 3 different regulators in the United States, combined it around the company number, which is an open identifier, so you can do that sort of data mashup. And they did this map. And if you look at the countries, you can the countries are sized by the number of subsidiaries. So this is the world according to Goldman Sachs. So United States, they own lots of companies in the United States. It's quite a big country. You can identify the United Kingdom here, Islands, Netherlands is hiding away there. See, there's a few in Australia. And this country here, that looks a little bit like a flexing arm, this is the Cayman Islands. Now, I'll leave you to your own conclusions as to why the Cayman Islands is about half the size of the United States to Goldman Sachs. But certainly it was very interesting in the context of a discussion at the G8 on tax and transparency. And this was the first time that this type of insight had been available. That data from 3 different regulators was combined into one analytical picture. Next one is around using data to take policy decisions. Now, I used to be a policy official. I used to take decisions based on data. Often that data was, national statistics, so it's very high quality, but was about a year or so out of date. You had to work quite hard to do that. Now, since coming to an open data company, then I kind of changed my worldview. So I thought, well, let's rerun some of this policy analysis on a live policy decision. So in London last year, there was a big debate about fire station closures. It's a very emotive subject, but unfortunately the way that our public finances were, then we needed to close some fire stations. And we thought, well, let's model it. We know where the fire stations are. We know what the response time needs to be. We know what the population is through the census. And actually, thanks to some open data from a company, we know, Telefonica opened up some mobile phone movement data from London. So we know what how the population of London changes over time. So we can see by tracking people's mobile phone movements, in aggregate, no personal data was harmed in this experiment. But we know through tracking people's mobile phones, we know how people move in and out of London over time. So we know that the financial district in London has a population of roughly 0 overnight and roughly 3 million during the day. So we were able to model the impact of fire station closures over time through both the sort of where people sleep, but also where people work. It's the first real step in taking turning London into a smarter city. But that's how open data can help transform how people take policy decisions. You're taking policy decisions based on the real world, modelling the real world, and seeing what the impact is of the change. That's a very quick canter through some of the examples of open data kind of answering that so what question that I framed earlier. But open data is actually coming in as kind of a unique moment for open data at the moment. Open data is starting to be embedded into global change. So the G8 last year, there was an open data charter that all of the G8 countries signed up to, moving towards a presumption of open by default. So the volume of open data being opened up is growing all the time. We've got emerging standards around the release of the release of data for particular fields. We're starting to see a number of organizations use open data and start incorporating it in their day-to-day business. But all of this combines into opportunity. I said earlier McKinsey had sized the market for open data at about $3 trillion. The amount of that that's realized at the moment, I would say, is probably in the low millions. So that just gives you a sense of the upside here. And the reason that hasn't been realized yet is the global environments weren't coming until now. They're only starting to come with things like the GA Open Charter, and with some of the leadership that's been seen from countries like Singapore. And what we, as the Open Data Institute, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help make that market happen. We're trying to help catalyze that market. So one of the things that we've done is we've helped, or we've created the world's first sort of robust quality badge for open data. So what that does is that starts to get into almost the service level agreement for the provision of data. So it asks questions about how frequently the data is going to be updated. It asks questions about how the publisher is going to engage with the people who are using it. It asks questions about whether the personal data has been removed from it, to make sure that you don't do anything bad. It starts to embed all of that. And what it gives you is it gives you a nice, easy-to-see badge that you can put alongside the publication of data. So, if you have a badge, then the person who's going to reuse the data knows that it's available and knows that it's going to keep coming. And this is because there are, in the same way as there are different qualities of object, there are different types of data. There is data which you create once for a particular purpose. It was useful for that purpose. You think someone else might find it useful, so you might open it up and just put it on a website. Then there is data that you create because that is your core reason for being. That is, as long as your company or your organization exists, it will have data about this thing. I gave an example of a regulator earlier. As long as there is a regulator, there will be a list of things that it regulates. Now that data is, you can put a lot more reliance on that data, and you can start building a business around that data because it's always going to be there. So what this data standard does, and the open data certificates, is it starts to separate those things out. It starts giving you an easy one-glance view of which class that data set sits in. Now that gives you a bit of an overview of what we do here at the ODI. We work with people to try and bring this market together. We work with people to try and make sure that $1 trillion market opportunity is seized. And we do that through providing advice to governments, through providing training and building help and support in this way, and also through supporting startup companies and providing them with marketing. So, thank you.